Hi everyone, I'm Liddy Romero. I'm CEO and founder of a nonprofit called Work-Life Partnership. And so I'm sure you have done this round before, but to get started, I would love to understand who's in the audience. I'll give you some intro and then we'll get deep into the topic of today's presentation. So entrepreneurs in the room, how many? Awesome. And I'm hearing that you have between 0 and 5 employees. Does anyone have any more? Any bigger? Great. Sectors, mostly, can you name them? Just throw it out. What sectors are you working in?
Pet sitting.
Pet sitting. Okay, so services.
Financial.
Financial. Do you have manufacturing anywhere? Great. Retail, hospitality, restaurant, and healthcare. Healthcare, cool. But most of you are small organizations, and is it first time entrepreneurship, serial entrepreneurship?
Fifth.
Fifth, yeah. Second, all right, so you just keep going. Sixth, awesome. Well, I live in Centennial. Let's see, 13 years ago, I moved to Colorado from Indiana. Where it was permafrost, and I was so glad to move here. 13 years ago, I also started Work-Life Partnership. We are a nonprofit 501c3. We are a little bit different in that we charge employers for the services we provide. So we're able to make revenue, not just by grants, if you all know this world, but by also charging for the services that we provide. So 13 years ago, I'm going to give you a little bit of story about me because I do consider myself first and foremost an entrepreneur, second, a social entrepreneur, and then I have other roles in the community. One of them is which I am a board member of the Colorado Enterprise Fund, and I'm so glad that they have sponsored this today because it is exactly the type of work that they should be sponsoring, so I'm glad to see their name here. But 13 years ago, I started Work-Life Partnership, moved to Colorado. I started it in May of 2009. I had my first child in September of 2009. I had my second child here's my birthday quiz, July of 2011. And then my third child on May 2013. And I give you that time frame because actually, had a child the day that I started, or the year that I started the business. And kept going. In the first 5 years of starting this nonprofit, which I very much consider a business, not so much a nonprofit, was spent also in the deep throes of motherhood and sleeplessness. So if any of you are in any of that situation right now, there is light, there's always light. I came in, and the reason I started Work-Life, there are a couple of reasons. One is that I did workforce development in Indiana, and I was really involved in the money that passes from government to the state to help people get jobs. Are you guys familiar with the workforce development system here? Cool. So I did that, and what I saw was that there was a massive turnover for people, all the people that we were placing into these jobs, right? There was still not enough money for them to make ends meet. In sort of these lower income jobs, and what we saw all the time were they would come back to the workforce center and ask for another job, another job, another job. Obviously that is a huge expense to employers in turnover costs. So that was one issue that I saw working in the workforce and government systems that I thought like employers can and need to take a better stance on, this whole retention, and specifically retention on frontline workers. When I talk about frontline workers here and in this presentation, it is no longer people who make minimum wage. Anyone know what the minimum wage is? Should yell it out. 12, but it's different, right? State by state. And the federal poverty wage, anyone know that? It's like $7.95 or something like that. There's a big discrepancy there, right? The people that we serve, when I say frontline workers, people are coming to our services and needing help. They're making an average wage of $22 an hour right now, right? So as employers, you do have to think about like the wages that you're given and whether your people can make it. I'm an employer too. I have 32 people now across the country. Our nonprofit is not just in Colorado now, it is a national organization. We do work with the likes of Starbucks. Starbucks buys our services. We provide it to their employees. We also do likes with the backyards here in Fort Collins. So who's our Bobo's? I think they're close. Bobo's Bars, they're 100%. I was thinking of like who are the smaller employers, right? Who really invest in the work that we do. So we're looking at the wages of people, and we are. So my history in figuring out what the workforce center needs. I did that workforce work. I saw a lot of recidivism back into unemployment. And then I would rewind a little bit further because it does deal with my entrepreneurial spirit. I come from a family-owned bakery in South Texas, a Mexican-American bakery in South Texas. Grew up in a family-owned business environment, and that absolutely led me to understand that like the turnover and the missing of one person in one business and a business as small as that it reverberates, right? Not just in that day, but through the month. I remember my parents always having to work during Christmas, during holidays, during all of that because those employees didn't show up. So that is an important part of my journey, an important part of why I'm here and talking about this. I founded Work-Life Partnership. We do focus on retention, but we also focus on like providing wraparound support to employees who are struggling through things like transportation, childcare, housing, mental health, behavioral health. Has anyone heard about us? No? All right, great, thank you. But we understand that there are social issues in all our communities that are affecting workers, and that businesses can, you have finite resources, right? You can't support everything, especially entrepreneurs and starting up. My intention here today with the information I'll give you is to give you at least some low-cost ways to think through how you're attracting workers, how you're keeping workers, the systems, the processes, the culture that you put in place so that you can help keep workers and keep them thriving under you. And if not under you, hopefully for the community that you're doing business in. Does that sound okay? Anyone had another thought about this? Or maybe you're like, hey, it sounds like you, Liddy, know about this, and this is the problem that I'm having. Because I would be happy to also address, I have 20 years experience in workforce development in this way, so I'd be happy to also keep that in the back of my head and think about resources for you. So I'm gonna crowdsource. Anything else that you would all like to talk about concerning this? Sounds good? All right, good. Okay. And I am not clicking. This is what Work-Life does. Just wanted to introduce that to you a little bit. This is the heaviest of text in our slide, and I want to propose this to you because I'm going to give you some time to think through it and read through it. Work-Life does work mostly with frontline workers, right? 23 average. They do have benefits. They're in jobs like CNAs, customer service, they're baristas, they're all those jobs. That makes up 76% of America's workforce right now. Do you guys feel like you employ those types of roles and jobs? Great. Okay, so I'm talking to the right crowd here. When we talk about what people are dealing with, we usually say like, oh, they just have a childcare issue, right? Or people come in late to work and they're giving you excuses, right, of why they're coming late, not showing up, absenteeism, all of that. And what this slide does is these are real quotes from real people that we serve across the country. And they're telling us that it's not just one thing, it's a lot of things. It's a multifaceted, complex life that they live when you're only living paycheck to paycheck. And these things are not things that we expect employers to solve. Do any of you feel like you always have to solve them for anyone? I do. I have 32 people and I still feel that. And we do this work and I'm like, oh my God, we have an amazing benefits plan and I still feel like I'm solving for all of this. So the intention is to say it should not rest on the shoulders of businesses solely. It's a labor problem. Or is anyone experiencing the labor problem right now? Not filling, right, the roles that you need. And that there are 3 things, or I'm going to present some things that you can do as a small business to help improve what we have coined in this system as job quality. Has anyone heard of the job quality phrase? Okay. I am asking a lot of questions, I know. So job quality. This is the best framework that I have seen, and I've been doing this work for about 8 years now. I was one of the inaugural members of the Aspen Institute's Job Quality Fellowship. And since then, about 5 years ago, I've seen a lot of things come from the Biden administration, right, to a lot of initiatives that are out there that deal with workforce. And this is the best thing I've seen because it's not prescribed to businesses. It's letting you understand what like the 3 pillars: economic stability, economic mobility, equity, respect, and voice. And if us as businesses, me included, can think through how we develop jobs to be better quality under these 3 pillars: economic stability, economic mobility, equity, respect, and voice, I believe, and I have seen it be an absolute competitive advantage to your bottom line. So I'll ask again, even though you might not know of this term job quality, have any of you seen this framework out in public? No? Yes, thank you. What do you do?
I do
coaching. Okay, great.
I do job search coaching for professionals.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And you probably understand that more and more, I think all across economic levels, workers and labor are looking for the right culture, not the pay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so when you have this culture that's built on these 3 pillars, there has been, and I have a list of resources and references and research that have said, you make a better business. You are more profitable at the end of the day. So I'll go a little bit deeper into this framework. I think when we talk about better jobs as a community, everyone's always talking about wage, right? Do you feel the pressure about that? Increase wage, increase wage, increase wage, increase benefits, the super expensive stuff, right? But I also want to, for this purpose, for your size of businesses, I will focus on 2 things today. And that is the equity, respect, and voice. That is almost free. You could just be a good person and a good boss. I know that takes time and training and effort, and patience and empathy and all of that. But if you create a workplace that that upholds equity, respect, and voice, you're already way ahead, I think, of most of America's businesses from my experience. WorkLife does do work with about 60 employers across the country. We don't do work with small businesses. I'll tell you a little bit of how I'm solving that in the end. We do work with employers who have mostly 350 employees or above, mostly healthcare. So a lot of those businesses are just barely catching up to this concept. Does anyone have equity, respect, and voice? Is that pretty clear? I mean, you're reading that, but you understand that. Yes?
Yeah, I have a question because I think it's Harvard Business Review just brought out people with disabilities and neurodivergent. My son has Asperger's, so it's near dear to my heart. But companies that are embrace those people like that are doing much better. That's even a boost to profit.
In addition to the formerly incarcerated, right?
Yeah.
Like you get loyalty from those individuals, they are loyal employees, yeah, and it does boost. So equity, respect, and voice is one, and I'll show you how we sort of solve that and a different way to solve it. And then the economic mobility. I'm going to skip this because I could definitely talk about what people need to make it in our cities, but also you're starting businesses. I get it. I've been there. Like the pressure is on for your finite resources, right? But if you ever need any information on it, I have a lot, including some living wage calculators that help employers set the standard of wages in which they're going to start jobs so that they can be more competitive in their sector. I have all of that information, but let's talk about economic mobility, and that is advancement. The opportunity to understand, not in 5 years will I get to this job, but in 1 year, my employer supports me enough and has the management or the coaching that I can feel like I'm worthy to advance or I'm valued in this organization. So those are 2 things that are pretty low a low-cost mobility, right, or equity, respect, and voice, and then the advancement in the types of jobs that you create. In this session description, there were 3 things that we were going to go through, right, and how to create more awareness and empathy. This is from a McKinsey report in partnership with an organization called CARA out of Chicago. They're a massive workforce development agency in Chicago, and they did this report which outlined what employers think workers want and what workers actually want. And this is the rate of which that is, and you'll see job growth, if you can't read from the back, job growth, pay, learning opportunities, aligned skill set, support, suitable environment. Those were the top things that employees wanted. What employers thought employees wanted was wage, benefits, higher pay, was all about money, right? But if you know any of these sort of employee engagement reports, you know it never turns out to what you think they want. So I'll focus on job growth and learning opportunity, and that is like, in very small ways, small businesses can support job growth and learning opportunities. I'm wondering if I could crowdsource right now, if any of you have thought through what sort of support in job growth or skill development that you can provide as a small business. Has anyone, yeah?
We have 22 employees,
Yeah.
so
Oh.
we're small, and I find that like job growth to be one of the hardest hurdles to overcome because there's only so many management positions.
Right.
We have really high retention rates, so
Yeah.
until somebody leaves, there's not necessarily like a path for promotion.
Yeah.
So investing in people's skill sets or.
What do you think about that, investing in their skill sets right now?
Well, we try very
You
hard
do,
to
it's
do
great,
that.
yeah.
Because somebody, I heard a quote one time that was along the lines of like.
What if you don't, when they
invest in
stay?
people,
Yes.
they stay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we definitely invest in them, but that's different than a path
Yeah.
to job. Could you talk a little bit more about job titles?
Yes,
versus-
job titles and all of that. So I think that there are 352 million small businesses in the country. There are 5.4 million of those are businesses with 1 to 19 individuals. And of that 5.4 million, they make up 47% of the nation's workforce. That's like almost 50%. That's insane, right? So there has to be some sort of way in which this is what my thought is, and this is the first idea, in which employers, especially in the same sector, start sharing talent. That you realize that there are ceilings in your small workforce, and there is a movement to say, let's start sharing, even though, it was the old kind of cherry picking, but if we all are manufacturers within this neighborhood, let's start sharing this talent instead of competing for the talent, so that this talent can go and reach their management level at another company or at a growing company. We have a very special board member on work-life partnership. His name is Mark Peters. He's an author of a book called The Source. He is writing another book. He's a manufacturer that manufactures fancy butter out in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's been doing this work forever. His next book is actually about how manufacturers should and need to start exchanging this talent when someone reaches these ceilings, right? That there should be open communication between a CEO of one company and a CEO of another company and says, let's start our own labor sharing right here within this sector, within this community. Because we know we don't want talent to escape, right? Some of these smaller cities and communities. We saw that happen during COVID with large companies. During COVID, a group of HR officials from Verizon, from T-Mobile, from AT&T, Sprint, right away set up a platform in which they started throwing all their dislocated or laid off workers and started exchanging the labor very quickly so that they could be picked up at other companies. So why can't a small business do that in a very, low-cost way? What do you think about idea? Is it new? Is it something that you do already, specifically in Fort Collins, where you're open to exchanging this talent? Is it somewhere where you have time to spend? I know sometimes you just don't have the time. Are you connecting with other CEOs? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating idea, but can you kind of frame it up a little bit? How would it even work?
Yeah, so when I'm operating sort of in this growth mode, right, I think it works by you connecting as CEO to another CEO. I doubt you have HR, right, full-time HR talent to do this. So in the cases of Grand Rapids, in Fresno, California, in Scranton, in Syracuse, I've seen that happen. In those cases, it's happening through sector partnerships. Are you familiar with, I know Fort Collins has sector partnerships. It's happening through sector partnerships where leaders of businesses in the specific sector get together and they're actively saying, this is a labor problem, I need a manager, or I have someone who is going to leave anyway because they've sort of maxed out their possibilities here. Can I actually hand them to you? Do you have jobs? And it's an actual handoff. It's a hard handoff to the other company of that.
So it's not like they're splitting their time?
No, yeah.
Okay.
No, but there are other instances in which there are labor shares, right, where it is like seasonal. So if a manufacturing plant is open during one season and they close off and they shed those workers, you want to keep them in the community and they trade them off with another employer until they're ready to have them back. I've seen that work too, yeah. And so the ability, right, to I want to get rid of the old thought about advancement and pay job promotions and all that because we're so small, we don't have that. But if we can start as a sector, as sectors in your fields, collecting that talent and keeping it in the community, I think when you need that talent again, you have an even more developed advance, a more developed person to start that new job that you want them to. And I've seen it work. And so when Mark Peters' book comes out on that concept, he'll go through the nuts and bolts of how that works within communities that he's been part of. The other thing was that we talked about, well, this is the small recognitions and advancements. This is another chart from that same report on what employers think employees need and then what really employees need. And I will send the links out. I was supposed to do this, I know, in some sort of platform. I read that on the way. But I will definitely send the links out to these to these reports that I think have just been so promising in helping lay the field for what quality jobs should look like in our communities. I'll leave it there. Thank you. But it was just more data that I thought would put that. All right, so I want to talk about the leveraging community, and really quick. Is that
1950.
Thank you. Okay. Nope, that's my fault.
This might be a question
Yes.
for later, but how do I put that into practice without feeling like I've done free HR for all my other companies that come to me and share my talent that I've hired? How do I actualize that without?
So where's that feeling coming from? I'm going to act as your therapist. Where is that feeling coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that they gain similar skill set, that they develop their skills in that same sector, and then they might find their way back to me with some new skills. And I also just, sometimes I struggle with it because I wonder, that's not what I do. I don't do free HR. That's,
Yeah.
And I get a little frustrated.
So I think that's an old paradigm.
Okay.
I do. If you want to talk about HR, I think HR is an old paradigm. I think the way in which we have delivered and created employee experiences, meaning that everything needs to be equal with the group of employees that you have, and not equitable, meaning we're not responding to the diverse needs of your workers across all levels. I think that has been deeply rooted in how HR as a whole industry and a field has created themselves. Yeah. So as a business owner, I know that you can think creatively and think outside the box, right? And that's what I think that this next generation of entrepreneurs really needs, is to think outside the box, because what we have been doing absolutely fell apart during COVID, and it hasn't been picked up again. So I'm just gonna ask you to think through, like, don't think of yourself as a single entity, right? As like just needing to, like, I know you need to grow your business, but think about how you need your community, how strong you need your community to be in order to have a thriving business. And if those people aren't thriving, right, like they're not buying, there are consumers as well. Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, I know where that comes from. Most of us have worked in bigger organizations that coveted talent.
Yes.
So you learn
Yeah.
from your behavior. What I learned from my dad, he told me this, he goes, Mark, when you join a company, when I was in college, he goes, you develop talent and get those people across the whole organization because they're gonna love you because you got them where they want to be, but at the scale across the company. And then people came to me because they were trying to figure out how to develop talent.
Yeah.
So once I left into businesses, I wanted people to now, I want people to grow, and sometimes they outgrow me. Sometimes they want to start their own business. But you're saying it's free HR, but I'm looking at unpopulating the world, right? But you got to get 3 companies to share. We're not really good about sharing with 4 columns. I've tried to get people to share. They don't like to share. It's really
Minosaurus, I have a book for my kids, it's like Minosaurus.
Yeah, but
It's
think about
mine.
having talent
Yeah.
to send to the world. And
Yeah.
think about your reach.
Yeah.
And then you have all these people out there.
Yeah, I think we are seeing, this is why we're seeing this weird stuff right now about like, oh, there's all these workers who want jobs and all these jobs that aren't getting filled, right? Because they don't want to work for, in that environment and that culture. Like, it's as plain as that. We know from, we obviously during COVID, our services absolutely escalated, and we know that employers were still struggling with all the basic needs of making ends meet, even with their COVID check. That made very little difference, actually. It's just that they were working 3 jobs, and they might have gone to 1 job, and those 2 jobs might have been the jobs that they left you for, right? So most of our people are working multiple jobs, just trying to make ends meet. The last part I'll talk about is the empathy and using your community to help bolster, I think the support that you have for your workers. Work-life partnership, this is how we work. We do one-on-one work through people called our navigators. We have navigators across the country. Those navigators work one-on-one with struggling employees. The employee comes to the navigator directly and says, I'm gonna get evicted, right? Which is the obvious problem, but we know that eviction has been escalated to, and this is the moment in which they are seeking help. So the navigator will go and ask them, what's your cash flow, your personal cash flow, right? Where do you get to work? How do you get to work? What's this job pay? We'll get some basic information, demographics. And then we'll start crafting a plan alongside them to help them get through that one issue, but also so that it doesn't happen again, or that they fully understand what they can afford in the community that they're in, and they might have to move, or they might have to go somewhere else, right? They also have to fully understand what they need to make in order to make it in that community. We know Fort Collins and many of Colorado's communities are increasing these expenses tremendously. So the navigator works one-on-one. We're usually spending 5, 6, 7 hours with people one-on-one to help them through that issue. Once they get through that issue, we hope that they continue to work with us. If not, then they can come to us whenever they need, how many times they need, paid for by their employer. In that work that we do, we are understanding exactly what we call social determinants of health issues are. Does anyone know that phrase? I know probably healthcare people do. So the social determinants of health, what is socially affecting them that is getting in the way of keeping their job? This stuff is you have to be very vulnerable to say, like, I don't have $300 in the bank, right? I don't have a safe place to live right now. My kids are coming over, I have them, this weekend, and I can't put food on the table. Those are the things that no employer can really get, and sometimes it's not our job to get, right? But they are sort of, you think you get them in all these employee surveys. Childcare isn't listed, or it's listed at the very bottom, even though we know childcare is a major issue. It's listed at the very bottom because we think that people, especially women, are leaving the workforce about a childcare issue before they even get to us. Work-life navigators actually leverage the resources in the community, government, and internally to help employees get started. So that's why we're a nonprofit, right? We don't have to go and buy these resources from government or community. Our navigators just actually know how to navigate this. It's just time that you have to spend doing this. Agency time spending this. If someone needs to go and apply for like CCAP, childcare subsidies from their local state, our navigator is right there with them. We know the fast track, right? Helping them save time. So as employers, I think there is also this, especially small employers and entrepreneurs, this urgency to connect with your community and understand, right, what the resources are. Now, how do you know what your employees are struggling with? You don't. We have surveys. But I would also say that I think it always does better when it's a third party and you're asking this third party to help you do the survey. They won't answer, unless you have a very, very tight-knit, close family community, they won't legitimately say, I don't have money to pay for gas, right? Have any of you experienced that? Those sorts of problems, yeah. The other problem that happens in businesses of all sizes, I know, sorry, I'll do one more, is the cliff effect. Anyone know the cliff effect? So you should really know this. So, yeah, you know it. Are you working for, you're saying yes,
I've
like.
worked for a food bank before, so
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. So the cliff effect is this phenomenon that happens when people are barely, they're using like a child care subsidy to pay for their child care while they're working. And they get a raise or a promotion from you, or you're asking them for more hours, and suddenly that wage kicks them out of their eligibility to have that subsidy. And in the end, that subsidy is way more valuable than the $1 that they received, right? Because childcare is an expensive cost in everyone's budget. So that means that they're saying no to you. They're saying, like, it's almost the opposite of the answer promotion. It's like, no, thank you. I don't need any more hours. So you're probably left wondering, but, like, your car is broken and you need to go fix it, right? Here's your opportunity to go do this now. They have made the math and they realize, like, I'm going to lose this thing just for, 2% more of my income, and it doesn't really matter at this point. As business owners in Colorado, you need to know about this. This is the policy that you need to know because it stymies your growth, your opportunity to engage your workers. I know, it's like, I see in my head a manufacturing line happening nice and smooth, and once something like that happens, it is a stall. So I would get involved to the ability you can in your local practices and laws and understand, right, how some of these things are absolutely affecting your workers. So I am at time, and I did not follow my script. But for Q&A, okay, I'm gonna open it up to some Q&A. Let me see just real quick. Oh, it's not. Any questions so far? Yes.
So I work with businesses to set up retirement plans, financial wellness, those different kinds of things. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say, because I talk to a lot of business owners who are passionate about trying to help their employees.
Yeah.
But their employees won't engage with it.
No.
So they either won't take the help
Mm-hmm.
or they won't participate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm just kind of wondering if you found some successful ways to help improve that participation, because people are responsible for 2/3 of their own retirement anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
I know these short-term needs can eclipse the longer-term stuff. But what are your thoughts on
So,
that?
yeah, according to national data, I think you're probably going after, I don't know what type of workforce you're going after, but in our surveys alone, across all our sectors, we reach right now 220,000 workers across the country. 60% of them reported that they're unable to pay a sudden $300 expense. I believe from the work that I've done that these workers probably know the value of a dollar more than I do, because they know exactly where their dollar is going. They have to make ends meet every month, right? So I think I don't think this is the audience for retirement. Fintech, as anyone know, that whole, like, fintech is absolutely blown up, yeah, and there's all these, like, apps to, like, give people their paycheck on the day, savings programs brought on by their employer, and I think 1 in, like, 12 of them actually survive, because there's just not money to go around. You're competing for people's paycheck, right? Not to mention that employers want them to buy the benefits and all of that. And by the end of the day, their take-home pay is probably reduced to like 50% of what they thought. So I just think that we're dealing with an American workforce, 78% who are frontline, who don't have a clear thought of advancement or making more wages, and therefore don't have a future story. Employers have done well when they are able to tell a future story and say, if you can, like Chipotle is one of them, right? Like, we'll give you shares, we'll give you this, we'll give you management. I know we're not at that size, but what is the future story that your employers are telling their employees on this? It's not, I don't think it's promising. Like, I think people are really struggling, and that's gonna continue. Especially as I think employers are going more into contract work, gig work, part-time work, right? They're trying to circumvent the benefits because they're so expensive, that I think that that's going to even worsen anyone's ability to save for retirement. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, having been in a situation myself, there are a lot of people are, I think when you're right on the edge of, just financial disaster, people are afraid to tell their employers.
Right.
Definitely.
It's shame. It's
huge
all
fear.
shame. Yeah.
You don't want to tell your employers, because you're afraid of being let go, you're afraid of their using that information. There's a huge amount of fear.
Yeah.
And that fear, you can't just say, I'm not going to do that, right? Because they've experienced it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of shame in these issues. Yeah.
Yeah, fear and shame.
And when we look at the demographics of the people we serve, we can see, right? Like, we can see very clearly, like, who the gaps between race and gender on that. I think this is the stuff that, this is called our employer scorecard, and we provide an employer scorecard to every one of our employer members on a monthly basis. And we use that to talk through, right, what is actually happening in their workforce with the DEI lens. And it's been pretty helpful in what our ultimate goal is to change employer practices towards job quality efforts. We want them to understand that asking for a clean uniform every day from their workers who have $15 an hour is not possible. Like, they're working 3 jobs, right? They can't, and to give them a demerit on a dirty uniform is actually not a job quality practice that will help them in the long run. Oh my gosh.
Something that we did to kind of address that, like $300,
Yeah.
I think was interest-free loans
Mm-hmm.
to employees, and we just started as a policy so everybody knows it's available, and because payday loans can be nightmares,
Yeah.
an interest-free loan for those things, and we found that like people that take them are, my car broke down, I can't otherwise get to.
Because otherwise they would do payday lending.
Right.
Yeah. So Worklife, we started a program, a small dollar loan program in Colorado only. We're lenders in Colorado. We're also nonprofit, remember, so we actually get money from foundations, and then we work with businesses to provide that money through us to employee lending, right, and lenders. The employees don't need to have a credit report. They also shouldn't be in the middle of a bankruptcy, and they should have 1 year of employment, and all we do is go on that. So we're lending up to $1,000 to employees almost next day to help them avoid the spiral that comes from loans, from payday loans. And that is a way in which I think, specifically because we're only in Colorado lending, like Colorado businesses have really, Denver Health is one of them. They took the interest rate and they actually saved it for their employees so that their employees had a savings program at the end of it, which is really cool. Yeah. I think my time's up. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me.